want to begin with a little bit of context around the precepts, sharing a little bit of what they are about and how we can use them, and then invite us at the end to just affirm them. And so it might be time to pause on the journaling. Yeah, thank you. Integrity, living with integrity and creating a container where we have a agreed upon standard is one of a tremendously useful way of helping us settle and relax and trust that we're able to attend to what's arising. That we know that we're on the same page and we've got each other's backs by the way that we take care. And the precepts can help do that. Just affirming the standards of behavior that we agree on. And so part of what the precepts do is it just helps set the space, the container, so that we can relax. We know where we're at, we know what our agreements are, we know what's okay, what's not okay, that I don't need to worry about my stuff being stolen or my cushion being jacked, we're cool. But for me, these external behaviors takes an edge off. But really, what I've found much use is to use them as internal reflections about how to relate to the stuff that's going on in my own body, heart, and mind. And this is something that just intuitively came to me. So I offer it, and with most everything that I offer, it's just an invitation to check and see whether it's useful for you. And if it is, then use it. And if it's not, don't worry about it. So there's two parts. There's the external level of behavior, which is an agreed upon standard, which we're going to discuss. And then there's the internal reflection on it. And so these precepts, these are the 8 lifetime precepts, are different from the 8 monastic precepts that we normally see in a monastery. And it starts with the refraining from killing and injuring any living being. And so just, simple things like if we see a spider, rather than squish it, see if we can catch it in a jar and take it outside. And I remember a story of Ajahn Chah. He went to a fishing village. And, the livelihood of the whole fishing village was fishing. And so when he was encouraging them to take the precepts, he wasn't encouraging them to stop fishing. He was encouraging them to stop killing each other, So it's a little contextual what these mean and how to apply them. But for me, the internal reflection of this really is to have a time out on the ways in which we hurt and harm ourselves, the ways in which we berate ourselves or shame ourselves or walk out on ourselves or are verbally abusive to ourselves, the way we should upon ourselves. And it's so embedded, it can go, it's like wallpaper, we don't even see it. So one of the ways in which the precepts can be rich is when we use this as some kind of attraction to get some perspective or context about the stuff that goes on all the time and we don't notice it. And to say, time out. It's not okay, it's not acceptable to have all of that stuff going on and believe it as if it's the truth, We've got to start waking up to that and be careful about the choices that we make and the way that we relate to it, So the first precept is about not harming, not killing. The second precept is to refrain from taking what's not given. So the food that's in the kitchen that's not the snack stuff, but we don't go raid the refrigerator in between meals for what they're going to make for the next meal, Simple things like that. We don't look in anybody else's journal. People who's got gear, we leave the gear alone. We don't walk off with the Buddha images or think that we want offering bowls in our, just simple. But from the internal perspective, what this is about really has to do with, for me, the way I interpret this as an internal reflection is not demanding things be different than the way they are. And so, I go through life, and there's sometimes, or have been times, where there's a long list of if only. If only I wasn't in pain, if only I wasn't sad, if only I had more energy, if only the cement mixer was not going, if only the tractor stopped going, And so I have this thought, if only, and then I am thinking that if only I get my if only list finished, then I would be able to meditate. And so the precept of not taking what's not given really is an invitation for us to let go of our if only list, to notice it and to relinquish it and to come back into the present moment. The third precept of refraining from excessive sensuality, in a context like this, it's an invitation to not intentionally engage in sexual activity. And that is a whole conversation about how that supports us coming into a rich and healthy relationship with our own life force, allowing ourselves to relax fully in our own skin, know what our sexuality is and how it moves and expresses itself without needing to engage in intentionally acting on it, with ourselves or with others. In terms of the dialed-in reflection, it has to do with the way we relate to the world of senses, sensuality, in order to pull ourselves out as a distraction or as a way of feeding ourselves in ways that might not necessarily be helpful. And so, one of the things that's a kind of a funny observation on a retreat is the obsession with the note board. What's happening on the notice board? And I remember being on a long retreat, and because of the obsession of the note board, it was a silent retreat. There were like 100 people on the retreat, and simply by obsessing on the note board, many members of that retreat had figured out who everybody was and what their name was. So it's not enough to watch the breath. It's not enough to feel your feet. It's not enough to feel the body. There's this need for information. Or what's on the back of the cereal box, And so it's just amazing the way we can grab on to certain kinds of sense things and use them, milk them, rather than just be with what's happening, which is that I feel restless, or I feel bored, or I feel anxious, or I feel unclear, and just be with the discomfort of that. We lean into something to get a momentary relief through grasping. And, we do it a lot in the world. So in the retreat time, we have an opportunity to just watch the way this happens, and not to get too obsessed with it or rigid around it, but just use it as an opportunity to see, is my way of relating to sensuality uplifting and supportive of my practice right now, or is it something else? There doesn't need to be judgment. We don't need to go back into blaming, shaming, criticizing, condemning. We don't need to do that. But just check it out. Is it helpful? How am I relating to the food? Is it to feed my hunger, or is it to feed my loneliness? To feed my sadness? How am I relating to the food? And then one of the things that I love about this way of doing the precepts is it breaks up all the speech precepts into the categories that are actually really helpful. And so the first one is to refrain from speech which is untrue. Actually deliberately saying things that are not true. And, okay, that's the way we speak, but it's also what we do in terms of the thoughts that we have. How much of the stuff that we are talking about to ourselves is true, that we're believing, And so letting it go. The next one is malicious or divisive speech. Now, in a context like this, where we are in a noble silence, there's not going to be, hopefully, too much context where that's what's going to go on, malicious or divisive speech. But in our own minds, that can happen a lot. And we can watch and see in a political situation where there's things which are activating, the way the mind grabs hold and splits and divides. And so this precept right now in our world, see, did this just come off? The robe thing. Thank you. So this precept is a useful precept for just looking at the impact of it in terms of the way the energy that divisive speech or malicious speech has in our overall world right now. And then just making an internal commitment not to move in that direction. Harsh or abusive speech, again, I would be surprised, though not unheard of, to hear harsh and abusive speech in a noble silent retreat. But if we had a window into what was going on in our minds, it's probably a lot more common than we would like to admit. Both in terms of the way we relate to ourselves and sometimes the way that we are thinking about others. And so it's to pause. It's a pause on that. Frivolous conversation. Now, in a daily life situation where we are interacting with each other, there's a need for sharing information, and sometimes it's just chit-chat as a way of coming into a relationship. But oftentimes, that chit-chat, which is just coming into a relationship, can move into just a continuous, talking, simply because we're unaccustomed to just being still and present and quiet with each other. That feels awkward. It feels somehow scary. And so we have an opportunity on a retreat like this to lean into the noble silence and to actually feel the nourishment of not having the obligation to keep up a conversation with people, and to just watch and feel the kind of, the peeling away of the onion and the opening up of the heart and the energizing of the body and the unraveling of the nervous system that is supported. But I also want to make another comment, which is not to undermine what was said earlier, but to just put it in context. We're here in a retreat center, and there is a building project that's going on. And we might be spared this weekend because it's raining today and it's supposed to rain tomorrow, and I don't know what's happening on Sunday. But we might not have the machinery operating while the rain is happening. But just a tiny little story. I was at Amravati when the temple was built, which was a big temple. And the soil structure there was the worst soil structure that you can possibly have. And so in order to build the temple, the foundations for it were 25 feet deep. And then there was all kinds of, the temple was made out of brick. So we had, first we had jackhammers, and then we had big, huge equipment digging, and then we had these massive cement trucks. And then for 9 months, we had the cement mixer going from 7 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night for the bricks. And I remember being on retreat with Ajahn Sumedho, and if the retreat hall was here, the cement mixer was halfway to the other building. It was right there, And so, here's this aggravating noise that was from just about the first meditation in the morning until just about the last one in the evening time. And it was you couldn't get away from it. It was right there. And I remember Ajahn Sumedho talking about the cement mixer. And he said it was a required part of the retreat. And so I remember listening to him say that and think, what on earth does he mean? Of course it's not a required part of the retreat. You can bomb it, you can turn it off, you can put sugar in the engine. What is he talking about? And what he was talking about, or what I understood him to be talking about, is the mind lets go of having things be a particular way. And when our mind lets go of having it be a particular way, then there's absolutely no problem with the cement mixer. And so in that way, it's an integral part of the retreat. It's not an aggravation and irritation. It's not supposed to be there. It's what's happening. You know? So, yes, noble silence is good and it's useful. And there is a way in which when we take care to respect coming in and out and care with doors and noise, when we keep the place quiet, it supports our nervous system unraveling. It supports our settling. But everything has context and balance and imbalance. And we can bring care to taking care with the quiet, and we can do it in a way that helps us feel uptight and anxious and that we got it wrong and that we didn't do it right, and where we're worried that we caused distress by somebody else because of something we did that was a little too noisy. And my suggestion is that in balance with the care around all of that is to remember that the whole point of this retreat is really letting go and relaxing into gladness and ease and well-being. That's what we're here for. That's what we're practicing. And so if we make a mistake or somebody else makes a mistake, or if the cement mixer is on and the machinery is driving us nuts, all of it is an invitation to let go of that it's supposed to be someplace other than that. And let that letting go be the kind of relaxation of our system. But that's what we're surrendering into, not that the container has to be perfect, or the noise has to be silent, and just like this and just like that. So in balance, context. Yeah. So the last one is I undertake the precept to refrain from wrong means of livelihood, and that includes drug and drink, which cause carelessness. And again, this is an upholding of the path. This is a commitment to live with integrity. This is a commitment to stay away from things which are addictive. And in our modern world, there's a lot more that's addictive than just drugs and drink. And so just, noticing our patterns where we get hijacked completely and, using an opportunity to come back to what our intention is without going into any of these others, which is to harm, to shame, to criticize, to judge, to blame. And just keep coming back to the present moment. Are there any questions about these 8 precepts? Or how to use them in this context? Good. Okay, so let's just affirm them. And I want to start with affirming the homage to the Buddha. So the homage to the Buddha, I think, is on actually the front page, page 3. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So we'll start with that. We'll do that 3 times, and then we'll do the recitation of the precepts in English. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. And now the precepts in English. I undertake the precept to refrain from killing and injuring living beings. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. I undertake the precept to refrain from excessive sensuality.
I undertake the precept to refrain from false speech. I undertake the precept to refrain from malicious or divisive speech. I undertake the precept to refrain from harsh or abusive speech. I undertake the precept to refrain from frivolous conversation. I undertake the precept to refrain from wrong means of livelihood.
So internally we have affirmed these precepts. We've set the container of standards of behavior which we have agreed on. And Sharon spoke beautifully about some of the qualities of the mind that support us in our practice. We started the evening with just beginning to feel our body and get a sense of what happens when we connect with ourselves, with the space that we're in energetically with each other. And so this is the holding. This is the holding of the retreat, of bringing forward a heart that is open, a body that is relaxed, connected, the faculties of the mind that are supportive. This sets the stage and the container for our retreat, to spend time together, to do the work that is needed of showing up, to allow us ease and gladness to emerge as we practice what it is to awaken the heart. And so I hope everybody rests very well, and tomorrow morning you feel restored and you're warm enough and dry enough